So, welcome to the Corporate Champions webinar, a series powered by Cement to improve your innovation results. We know that innovation is a journey with many possible ways, and the key is not to copy the best practice, but to learn from the experience and design your own next practice. I'm Eduardo Maneira, and I'm feeling honored to host Ahi Gvirtsman, the former VP of Innovation at HPE and the author of the book Peak Innovation Principles. He's currently CPO at Duco, one of the most important innovation consulting companies from Israel. Ahi, thanks for coming.
Thanks for having me.
Ahi is one of the most inspirational leaders that I have already met in my life. He has the ability to make hard things seem very simple. Please, let's start the journey with Ahi and find our paths to innovation. Ahi, we are with you.
Thank you, Eduardo. Thank you for the kind words. So, hello, everyone, and welcome. My name is Ahi Gvirtsman, and I'm currently Chief Product Officer for a company called Duco, Innovation Ecosystem Design. We create innovation ecosystems for established corporations. And today what I wanted to talk to you about is basically everything that you ever wanted to know about corporate innovation, but were afraid to ask. I'd like to start the session with a short story. So I was blessed with 3 sons, and a few years back, when I came home in one of the evenings after a long day at work, one of them was waiting for me with a game that's called Stratego. Maybe some of you are familiar. Stratego is a board game where you're supposed to capture your opponent's flag. And he was waiting for me with the box opened, and his eyes were all glittering, and he was saying, "Daddy, today I want the bombs to move." And if you are familiar with this game, then you know that in Stratego, the bombs are supposed to be stationary. They're not supposed to move. And this is a true story. I turned to him and I said, look, we really don't have much time. You have to go to bed in about 30 minutes, and you haven't had dinner and haven't taken a shower yet. And besides, the rules of the game plainly state that the bombs are not supposed to move. So let's just play the game as as we're supposed to, and continue with with our daily routine. But then I caught myself, because it was a few months after I started running an innovation program for the software division of HP, of Hewlett Packard, and I said to myself, "You're running a global innovation program for a company that has 20,000 employees worldwide. Your son comes to you with an innovative idea, and that's the answer that you give him. Shame on you." And so I said, you know what, or let's try. And we tried his idea, and it was so great that today our house rules for Stratego are that the bombs can move. We also tried allowing the flag to move, but then the game never ends, so we didn't continue with that idea. The reason that I'm telling you this is that innovation is such a household word right now for corporations. It will be very difficult for you to find an executive that doesn't say that they want innovation in their organizations. But the truth of the matter is, when somebody comes up to you as an executive with an innovative idea, you will feel a real discomfort when you hear that idea. And I can attest that when my son came to me with this idea, I felt a real physical discomfort, and I learned to identify that sign because I felt it also when I encountered quite a lot of innovative ideas as part of running the innovation program for HP software. And so my message to you when I talk about innovation is, if something is innovative, you will feel uncomfortable when you hear it. That should be your first sign for true innovation. And the main challenge that we have at Duco when we come up to organizations and design innovation ecosystems for them is how to create an environment where this discomfort is something that people can identify, and that we can create a mechanism that doesn't allow this discomfort to kill innovation, because that's what happens if it's just left to its own devices. So my name, again, is Ahi Gvirtsman, and as I said, I ran the innovation program, was Vice President of Innovation at HPE Software. I wrote the book, The Peak Innovation Principles, and I've been, until very recently, a part of the software industry for over 25 years. And today, what I'm going to talk to you about is basically, I will tell you a little bit about my past. I will tell you the main things that organizations do today when they try to be innovative, the shortcuts that they take. And I will give you a taste of what success can look like, what the road to success, to successful innovation may look like. And I hope that you will find this interesting and beneficial. So just to give you an idea, this is me a few years back. There's a lot of festivities that are involved with innovation, a lot of idea competitions, ideation events, and that is all good and well. But at Duco, we have a saying that it's not about ideas, it's about making ideas happen. And so the question is, what happens the day after the event? You know, what happens beyond the internal communications that you're looking at right now that we used to do at Hewlett-Packard Enterprise? The various ways that we recruited innovation coaches, and we got people to submit ideas and help their colleagues develop their ideas. All of this is very important, but there always needs to be this thought in mind of what is the outcome, right? How do we create a mechanism where it's beyond the festivities, beyond the internal communications, beyond the internal brand? It has to be something with a tangible outcome that the business can measure, and that it impacts the business in ways that are important for the senior decision makers in the organization. And so today, because innovation, corporate innovation, is something that is so desired, people really want to see their organizations become innovative. The moment that they realize it and they want to get to results, they start looking for shortcuts. And the first shortcut that I'd like to talk to you about is creativity, because it's very easy to confuse innovation with creativity. And I've seen this happen quite often, where organizations basically look and say, okay, we're going to do creativity workshops. We're going to teach our employees how to be creative. We're going to give them opportunities to be creative, and great things will happen. But the thing is that creativity by itself is not enough. There has to be some supporting infrastructure that allows this creativity, which will cause people, especially managers and decision makers, to feel uncomfortable. If I can remind you of the Stratego story from the beginning, then there has to be some foundation that allows creativity not just to start, but also to have a follow-up that allows to incubate these creative ideas and turn them into outcomes that actually impact the business. And if all we do is focus on creativity, that will lead to a loss of credibility, because, you know, employees don't have spare time. They have tasks to perform. They're measured on these tasks. And if you ask them to jump into this process that you create, or ecosystem or competition, with their ideas, and nothing comes out of it, and they realize that it was all about an innovation theater, all about internal marketing, then the next time that you invite them to participate, they will not come. It will take time for them to, for the organizational memory to forget that experience, and to build credibility again will be difficult. So it's not enough to just do the ideation parts. You know, saying that innovation is creativity is equivalent to looking at this 4-step process and saying, we're just going to do the first one. We're just going to do ideation. But that's not enough, because if you look at the way that startups are built today, outside of corporations, there are several steps to the establishment of a startup, right? There's the ideation, where people come up with ideas, but then you need to incubate, you need to secure some funding, and eventually a decision maker, somebody who has access to resources and budgets and the authority to divert them from one project to another, that person has to make a decision and say, this idea, now it's an entrepreneurial project, it's not just an idea. I'm persuaded that it is validated, that it has good enough supporting evidence that I'm going to invest in this and I'm going to make it part of my annual work plan for the business unit that I run. And that's something that takes time, it takes effort, and it takes perseverance from an organizational standpoint. And that's tough because it's a lot more than running an ideation event. And that is why we don't see innovation flourishing in corporations all over the world, because it is not a simple thing to do. And I like to use this story about the person who is searching for his keys under a street light, and not where he lost the keys, because he says that under the street light he can see what he's looking for. But the thing is that looking for your keys that you lost somewhere else under the street light is kind of like focusing on creativity instead of taking the harder route, which is longer and requires more investment and more perseverance. The second shortcut that I'd like to mention is that innovation is invention, right? We think that innovation is all about invention. It can be just about technology. It can be about intellectual property. And people think that if it's not one of those, then it's not really innovation. But we have to remember that invention is just one of several possible triggers of innovation. And I find that it really depends on the person that I'm talking to in the organization based on their role, right? So usually when I talk to CTOs and VPs of technology, VP R&D, their approach is that innovation is mostly invention, that it's mostly technology, that without those, it's not really innovation. But my point is that there are various ways in which innovation can flourish. I'm involved with a major municipality in Israel that has a thriving innovation ecosystem, an internal innovation ecosystem that is, regularly coming up with fantastic ideas for innovation that have nothing to do with technology. I'll just give you a few examples. They have, for example, a library that allows you to borrow various artifacts that you might need in your apartment, because in Tel Aviv, in the center of Tel Aviv, the apartments are relatively small, so people don't have a lot of storage space. So if you want to have a drill, for example, you want to make a hole in the wall, you don't have room to keep that drill for, months and years, just for the few opportunities that you want to drill a hole in the wall. Or if you want chairs, foldable chairs, or something like that. Another example is that the municipality brings its services to populations that find it difficult to reach the city hall. So they call it municipality on wheels. So they have a special car that has employees from the city that come to various neighborhoods and offer municipal services to the inhabitants of those neighborhoods without making them come to City Hall. Just a couple of examples out of many others that are not involved with technology, that are not driven by invention. And I like to use the story about the blindfolded people who are filling out an elephant, and each one feels a different part of the elephant. The person that's feeling the tail is saying that it's a rope, and the person who is feeling the tusks says that it's a spear. But you really need to take the blindfold off, take a step back and look at the entire elephant. And if you want to do innovation in a corporation as a whole, then you must look at the full picture. You cannot choose to focus just on technology, or just on ideation, or just on invention. All of these terms that I just said have their place in the full ecosystem, but you need to look at the full ecosystem, and you need to implement a full ecosystem, because if you don't, then you're not going to get the result that you're looking for. And when I talk about an ecosystem, that is an extension of the first element, which I talked about, the process. So an ecosystem consists of a process, and the process is supported by decision makers that are involved and a community that is supporting this process. The community consists of members of the workforce inside the organization. Some of them act as entrepreneurs that are driving the ideas through the funnel. Some of them are functioning as enablers, people who have subject matter expertise that is required for the success of the projects. It can be people who work for departments that are usually the traditional blockers of innovation, like legal, branding, finance, that are the gatekeepers of the organization and are traditionally the ones that block innovation for good reason, because they want to protect the existing business, and that's great. But you need them as part of your innovation community so that they can explain what needs to happen for an entrepreneurial project to be able to go around a roadblock without disrupting the existing business. And they need to be part of that community. Another way in which this community supports innovation is if you want to do open innovation, if you want to work with startups, and the startups are driving their technology and the way that it can impact the business of the corporation, they're driving it through the process, but they need internal help. They need someone from inside the organization to serve as their champion, because otherwise they really have no chance of making it to later stages. Startups run away from corporations that basically tell them, okay, you're very interesting, now good luck, here's a contact and good luck to you. That's not good enough. There needs to be someone who is championing the startup, and that happens as part of a community that supports the process. And the involvement of the decision makers is critical at various points of the process, because without it, there will not be any significant outcomes. Because as I said earlier, someone at the end of this process needs to make a decision to invest in a project as part of an annual work plan. If these decision makers do not feel that the ecosystem is a tool that they're using, that is there to serve them and promote the KPIs that are most important to them, then we are wasting our time, because nothing significant will not come out of this process if it's not part of a full ecosystem. I can tell you that at HP Software, what we did was we had an online forum for ideation. We ran events regularly. You saw some of the pictures earlier. We had innovation coaches that were trained all over the world and served as agents of change and worked with the various employees. I write about this extensively in my book. And we also added gamification in order to motivate people to participate in the various activities of the program. We did not pay for ideas. We did not pay for success. People got much, much greater rewards that were psychological. For example, they got to present to senior executives. They got access to very high quality training that you wouldn't get otherwise. So we gave them a lot more than just money. Once their ideas got through the initial filtering to incubation, and the filtering was heavily based on crowdsourced voting, they would get 10% of their time for 3 calendar months. They would get mentoring, and they would get access to volunteers, internal volunteers that helped them do initial validation. If you're familiar with Lean Startup, it was an initial problem solution fit. And then they presented to an innovation council that consisted of the most senior executives of HP Software, chaired by the executive vice president, the person who reported to the CEO of HP at the time. And once they got through the innovation council, they got access to a little bit of budget and some work time and some R&D resources in order to do the full problem solution fit and to do an initial product market fit, namely a minimum viable product. If you're familiar with Lean Startup, if you're not, and you're interested in corporate innovation, then you have to read the Lean Startup. And also I highly recommend a book called Running Lean. During the seed stage, any decision maker that was sitting on the Innovation Council that approved a project to go to seed had to give it some attention and tell the project team what they needed to show them in terms of the findings of the validation in order for them to make a positive funding decision and take the project to realization, meaning that it will become part of the annual work plan for that business unit that they are heading. And of course, during realization, they also received mentoring from the innovation team. So that's kind of that's a bird's eye view of the process and the connections that it had with the community and the decision makers. I can talk about this for hours, but that just gives you an idea of the level of detail and the level of attention that is required to maintain something like this. And it did run for quite a few years, with cycles that ran every 3 months. We would invite new ideas to come through this process. The third shortcut that organizations take is they think about innovation in terms of breakthrough. They say, oh, if it's not disruptive, if it's not completely breakthrough, it's not the next iPhone, then it's not really innovation. But my message to you is that if you do that, then all you do is you get a small number of big bets. And we're talking about projects that, by definition, because they're innovative projects, the reason they make people feel uncomfortable is that their probability of success is not very high. And so if all you can do is a small number of big bets, then as an organization, you will probably fail. It's just a numbers game. And changing the organization to bring it to a point where it can do big bets, it's like open heart surgery. And our approach at Duco to innovation is this is a gradual process. You cannot do just a small number of big bets. You have to do something that is continuous. You need to take a measured amount of risk over a longer period of time, and you need to do it under a predefined budget. If I look at what I believe the right way is for innovation, for organizations to start innovating, one of the things that strikes me when I look at the literature is that you can pile the books on what you should be doing a few meters high, and you can create all of these great presentations that will give you 1,000 different things that you should do. Right? You should be more like Amazon because they're doing this. You should be more like Google because they're doing that. And my message to you is that there are people like the ones that that work with me at Duco that have enough experience that they've witnessed innovation systems being created in corporations. We've seen entrepreneurial attempts. We've seen many different things that brought us to the realization that just like Pareto's law, which says that 80% of an observed effect is caused by 20% of the factors, there's also this Pareto's law for what you can do to get the most effect when you're trying to create an innovation ecosystem inside a corporation. So Pareto's law, if I can give you a few examples, is when you write code, then 80% of your bugs are caused by 20% of the lines of code. Or 80% of revenues are generated by 20% of your customers, or that 80% of complaints are generated by 20% of the customers. And I can tell you from experience, it's usually not the same customers from the second example. All right. So in the same way, what I claim is that if you take the right 20% out of the things that you should do, quote unquote, in order to become innovative, you will get 80% effect, 80% benefit. And when we look at a path, when you're trying to go on a trip on a boat, and you want to go from a source point to a destination, but you're not walking on land, you are on water, then you always need to look and check where you are in order to know where to go. And we have to ask ourselves, what are the right 20% questions that will generate 80% of the value when we launch an innovation ecosystem that will bring us to the destination in the fastest way possible. But also, we would like to have something that is equivalent to what seafaring people had in the beginning of the 16th century, which was called the sextant, which allowed them to measure approximately where they were in terms of longitude and latitude so that they could correct course. They also needed to know the time, and that's a whole different story, quite a fascinating one, of how a clock was invented that could stay accurate in different humidity levels, different temperatures, different barometric pressures. But the point is that when you are sailing on water, then even when you think that you're standing still, you're not, because the currents are moving you around. So you have to constantly measure and check where you are so that you can correct course in case that you are off course. And the Duco Corporate Innovation Canvas, which I will touch on in the next few minutes, is a tool that basically allows you to avoid the shortcuts that I was talking about earlier. And it helps you keep an eye on where you're going. It helps you understand at each and every moment in time whether you need to correct course. So this is the Corporate Innovation Canvas. That's the way that we call it. And as you can see, it consists of several elements, and each one of them talks about a different aspect of your innovation ecosystem. All right, so for example, if we look on the right-hand side, we're looking at entrepreneurs, right? So is there a driving force in your organization that actually pushes innovation forward? What is this driving force? Where is it coming from? Do you have a process, right? Is there a process that an entrepreneurial process that is managed and exists and is being invested in? We can talk about goals. What is the purpose of the innovation? What purpose are the innovation activities serving? Right? Because they have to serve some sort of purpose that is important for the decision makers in the organization. And so what we do is we basically interview you and we ask you some basic questions about your company, and that way we can place you on this canvas and tell you where you are in terms of your innovation proficiency. And I'll give an example. So let's look at the left-hand side, the area on the left-hand side, right? So we call this area of the canvas purpose. Why? Because we say that these three elements, decision makers, goals, and success criteria, are elements that designates what is the level of purpose that your innovation has in your organization. Let's look at three examples, right? At where the types of questions that we ask in terms of how purposeful your organization is, right? So I would like to take you through a short exercise. Okay, so let's start with decision makers. I will ask you a question, and I would like you to think about the answer between 1 and 5, where 1 is strongly disagree, and 5 means that you strongly agree. All right, so first of all, decision makers. Decision makers, we define them as senior managers with access to budget and resources and the authority to allocate them. Some organizations seem like they have decision makers, but actually the real decision maker is simply the CEO, because the managers of the business units are so limited in their authority to make decisions about the annual budget. It simply has to serve the ongoing demands of existing customers, and there's really no flexibility to allocate anything else. And so ask yourselves, who are the decision makers in your organization, and to what level they support innovation activities and are familiar with them down to the individual ongoing projects relevant to their domain. So if you strongly agree that the decision makers in your organization support innovation and are involved, then give yourself a 5 grade. If you strongly disagree with this statement, give yourself a grade of 1. Okay? The next one is goals. So again, I'm going to read the statement, and I would like you to think to yourselves whether you strongly disagree, meaning 1, or strongly agree, meaning 5. So there's expectation from decision makers that innovation will impact strategic KPIs, key performance indicators, such as revenues, market share, operating efficiency, etc. So think about this for a second, whether you strongly disagree, strongly agree, or something in the middle. And I want to explain the significance of this one, because oftentimes I see innovation activities that really start without thinking about what they're trying to serve. So you're setting out these communications to the organization saying, come up with innovative ideas, and we'll do a competition, and the winners of the competition will win $10,000, right? Fantastic. So you created a festival around innovation. But a lot of the ideas that you'll get are junk. Why? Because they don't serve anything really useful for the organization. So if I bring in an innovative idea that talks about doing Kalanetics next to the coffee machine every day at 12 because it increases the employees' efficiency, that could be really nice if the goal of innovation in your organization is to increase the efficiency of the employees. But most of the time, senior management wants innovation for things that are a lot more relevant to the company's stock price, to the company's balance sheet, right? I want innovation to increase, to generate new revenue streams for the company. I want innovation to increase revenues from existing customers significantly. I want innovation to allow us to manufacture the same products at a much, much lower cost and become more efficient. Right? These are the sorts of statements that you will hear from executives if you talk to them about what innovation is supposed to serve. So again, write down whether you strongly disagree or strongly agree with the middle statement. And for the third one, success criteria, how is innovation itself measured? All right, so if we're doing innovation activities, innovation is measured mostly based on progress-oriented KPIs, such as number of funded experiments, number of pilots, impact on employee perception, etc. First of all, whether it is measured at all, right? Whether anybody is measuring anything about innovation. But more importantly, we don't make the mistakes of trying to measure things that are very, very short term, but only designate action. For example, if innovation success criteria today in your organization is focused on how many events you run, how many employees submit ideas, how many employees show up to events, then that's nice, but those are just early indicators. That's not really the important thing. And on the other extreme, if all your innovation activities are measured on is the amount of revenues that they generate for the company, that's such a long-term goal, because if you are creating innovative projects, that could take 2 years, 3 years until they actually thrive. So if the innovation activities are just measured on the ultimate outcomes, then that is also not a good idea, because management might lose patience very, very quickly. So there needs to be early indicators that are valuable, that have a meaning, that are meaningful, that are not too short-term and are not too long-term. So again, the question is, to what extent you agree with this statement that is measured mostly based on progress-oriented KPIs, such as the number of ideas that get funded, the number of pilots that get run, or things like impact on employee perception of the organization as innovative, something that you can actually measure. So now, if you take the three numbers and you add them, then that gives you an idea at what level your innovation activities are purposeful, right? And so you look at, let's say that you are, at a level of 3 up to a level of maybe 6, then it means that right now there's not a lot of purpose to your organization. And one of the things that I talked about was I gave the example of a sextant that used seafaring navigators in earlier days to find their way. And so one of the things that happens is that if the element of the canvas that has to do with being purposeful is low, but you are active on the other elements, meaning that maybe you're getting people to serve as entrepreneurs, as we looked at the other areas of the canvas. You have other people that are engaged as enablers, but at the end of the day, nothing really comes out of this because your decision makers are not engaged, you're not really measured properly, and there are no clear KPIs that innovation is supposed to promote. And so your senior executives are not really involved in what you're doing, and this is a picture of an innovation manager that did not focus on being purposeful, right? And I like to call this all sizzle but no steak, right? You're doing a lot of stuff, you're making a lot of noise, you're doing events, you're involving people, you're involving employees, maybe you're doing events with startups. You might actually be doing it at scale. This could be something where you have, dozens, maybe hundreds of employees involved, but eventually nothing comes out of it because your decision makers are not really into it. And so All sizzle but no steaks means that you are creating a lot of noise, you're creating a lot of excitement, but at the end of the day, you stay hungry. And when the purposeful area of the canvas is low, then you can see that you see a lot of workshops, ideation activities, some idea selection, but there's really limited to no impact on the business unit work plan. And so, to summarize, this is an example of one area of the canvas out of the three that it is composed of. Each area is composed of 3 elements, and so we have 9 elements in total. And what we do and what we will do as part of the training that we are planning to do, if you're interested to sign up following this session, the training that we're planning will include, first of all, an analysis of your organization based on the canvas that I showed you. And also, I will teach you the various ways in which you can lose your way when you're implementing innovation. For example, not putting enough emphasis on the purposeful aspect of your innovation program. And I will also teach you what are the right things, the things that you must do in order to create a purposeful innovation ecosystem. There are certain steps that if you take, that you put thought and focus on them before you launch your program, before you launch your activities, you will have a much, much higher probability of being successful. And that holds not just for the purposeful area of the canvas, but to the 2 other areas as well. Each one of them creates a different sort of imbalance if you don't invest in it correctly, if you don't prepare correctly. And also, I will teach you how to measure yourself as you move forward to make sure that you are on the right path to the destination. So to remind you, we're talking about an ecosystem that we're trying to create. The ecosystem consists of the process, the entrepreneurial process. It is connected to decision makers at just the right points because we don't want to consume too much of their time, but we want to get just enough so that they will be able to empower the process and that they will fund entrepreneurial projects at the end of the process. And it is supported by a thriving community that supports both internally generated ideas and startups that can contribute to your business. I'm not talking about a CVC right now. I'm talking about startups that you want to incorporate into your existing products and services. Another thing that I want to close with is why this is so great for your employees. So if you're involving your employees in the community, you're giving them amazing opportunities that are much more than just compensating them for their contribution. An opportunity to impact company outcomes, positive exposure with management and colleagues. I can tell you about junior employees that found themselves presenting to a forum of executive VP and senior VPs, which is something that is not very, very common in corporations. You get connected to a network of company superstars that are innovators just like you. You get a variety to your work experience, get an opportunity to contribute knowledge and experience to your colleagues, and mostly significant personal growth. And I want to end with this story. And you're probably asking yourselves how I'm going to get to that phrase that is written on the slide. So bear with me. One of the stories that really moved me during my years as head of innovation at HP was one of our employees from, not from Israel, from a different country, that presented at one of our innovation events, and his idea got into the process. It reached actually the 3rd step, the seed step, but it did not get to realization. So essentially, you could say that he failed. But the way that we structured the program made it so that even when people failed, it was a positive experience for them. And a few months after that person's project was shut down, they had another innovation event. And that person was presenting at the event again, but this time it was a personal story. And his presentation consisted completely of wedding photos. And he told a personal story of how he used to be what we called, in America, it's called a nerd, right? A kind of a software nerd. He was very shy and very closed to the world. but that his experiences as he presented at the innovation event, as he went through this experience of driving an entrepreneurial project inside the corporation, gave him a lot of optimism about what he can achieve in life. And it gave him the courage to court a lady who he was interested in. And he actually showed her the video of him presenting at the innovation event. And then she said this sentence to him, that innovation makes you sexy. And it was really a moving moment because I realized that this ecosystem that we are creating in various organizations, they really change people's lives. And so I want to tell you that there's really so much positive coming out of creating an innovation ecosystem, not just to your business, but also to your workforce. And I think that organizations that create such ecosystems really will become much, much better places to work for. And so I urge you to make your company's innovation sexy. So you can read my book, which I highly recommend. You can follow me on LinkedIn and on Twitter. And also the link under my name leads to a magazine called The Funnel. It's a magazine that focuses on corporate innovation specifically, not about startups and technology. It's about the latest and greatest and case studies and interviews, all focused on the single topic of how to do innovation inside established corporations. And so I thank you for listening in. I hope that you will sign up to participate in the training. And I look forward to meeting you in person in a few months when we actually do the training. So thank you very much.
Thank you for sharing, Ahi. It was amazing, this ability that you have to put a huge...
Eduardo, would you like...
Just a moment. Do you hear me?
Eduardo, would you like to take some questions now?
Yeah, I will take some questions now. I select some of them here. The first one is, how is the best way to receive innovation ideas to avoid that?
Eduardo, I can't hear you.
To avoid that uncomfortable. Ahi, can you hear me now? Ahi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you now.
Okay. The first question is, how is the best way to receive the innovation ideas to diminish the uncomfortable that is common in this first step of receiving innovation ideas?
So that's a very good question. I think it's an acquired skill, right? The first one is to identify the physical signs of this discomfort, right? Because we cannot really fight it. When we hear an idea that is innovative, we will feel some level of discomfort and we cannot prevent it. But what we can do is we can learn to identify it, okay? We can learn to identify it, and once we do, now you can see me. Hello, everyone. And once we know how to identify the physical signs, then the next thing that I would do is I would use something like a lean canvas. I mentioned something called running lean earlier. You can also search YouTube for a video that is called Lean Canvas in 20 seconds. And so if somebody comes to you with an innovative idea and you want to deal with the discomfort, then ask them to formulate their idea as a canvas. Because the lean canvas is a great way to take an idea that is abstract, an idea that makes you feel uncomfortable, but break it down into specific questions that you can then discuss with the person that comes to you with the idea, and then point to the things that are assumptions. For example, somebody comes to you with an idea and says, you know, I have this idea, and you tell them, okay, the first question that we ask with the lean canvas is, what is the problem that you're trying to solve? And this person states the problem. For example, we talked earlier about municipality on wheels. So the problem that they were trying to solve was there are people in the city that cannot come to City Hall and they don't have a way to get municipal services. And then my answer is, how do you know? So they could tell you, I know because I work with these people, I meet them on a weekly basis as part of my job, and this is their problem. Or they can say, well, I'm assuming that that's the case. And then you tell them, okay, how can we check that your assumption is correct? And it becomes a conversation about facts, not about opinions. And that makes it much, much easier to deal with the discomfort, because you stop talking about whether you like something or not, whether somebody is passionate or not about their ideas, and it becomes a conversation simply about facts and about assumptions. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you, Ahi. The second one is, what is the good first version for an innovation thesis, or define the thematic of an innovation program? Yes. Well, many people are just starting building innovation inside the companies by the innovation thesis, defining which kind of the focus or thematic they all put in the program. People are asking here what is a good first version of innovation thesis, or how to define which area the company should to explore in the innovation for bringing ideas and building new products.
That's a good question. I have to say that over the years I learned that it's very difficult. It's very difficult to identify exactly where to go. And some organizations have leaders that have those insights and can, they talk about looking in ice hockey. In America, they talk about everybody looks where the puck is. I'm looking where the puck is going. So it does take a certain level of insight and talent to see where the puck is going, and to kind of be able to foresee where the market is going and try to get there first. But I have to say that if you pick the right KPIs, the right goals for your innovation program, for example, at HP Software when I started, it was just about new sources of revenue. All right, we focused on how to generate new sources of revenue. But what happened during the years of the program was that out of the ideas that came out of the program, a strategy emerged that had to do with integrating a big data platform with the various products that we had in the portfolio, because we realized that big data could take the products in the portfolio, leapfrog them forward. So that became a more focused strategy. So I would say if you have somebody in your organization that can predict where the market is going and create a context, and we call this a challenge for the innovation activities, that's great, use that. But if you don't, you can still launch a program and just ask yourselves, what are the KPIs that we're trying to impact through innovation?
Good. Connecting with this answer, the next question is, what is a good roadmap for implement the innovation inside a corporate?
Well, if you look at the canvas that I presented earlier, I would tell you that you need to invest in all the 9 elements and gradually accelerate, right? I'm not going to tell you that you need to do everything at a level 5 from day one. There's a gradual way to build this inside an organization. I'm afraid I don't have the time, to explain this, and this also is basically what we do at Duco, right? We sit with you and we explain to you, we give you a detailed plan of how to do this, and this will be part of the training, right? This takes more than 2 minutes. But in short, the answer is, when you look at the canvas, you will see basically what are the elements that you will need to implement, and we will guide you through a gradual implementation.
So thank you, Ahi, for your time and for sharing your knowledge with us. It was amazing. I know that people here is going home full of insights. And I invite everyone now to download the book that we built in partnership, Semente and Duco, the Innovation Pipeline, who is the link inside the description of this video. And also I invite you to subscribe for the next webinars and also for be part of the training with Ahi in June. Okay, Ahi, thank you. And that's it.
Thank you, Eduardo. Thank you, everyone. I hope you enjoyed it, and have a great day.
Thank you.